Good afternoon. This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriation and Adjudication will now reconvene with the Department of Labor and Bureau of Statistics and Plans. I want to thank everyone for their presence today. As we continue the budget process for fiscal year 2019, we face overwhelming challenges due to the Trump Tax Act impact on the government of Guam's revenue stream. Given such austere times, we found it prudent that the committee have a different tone and approach to budget hearings. The continued implication that past patterns of appropriation levels will no longer be taken as a given. Prior to this hearing, I sent a letter to each agency present today asking you to provide testimony answering specific questions relative to your agency's missions, how you measure the achievement of your missions, and other relevant matters. In prior fiscal years, the committee had taken an incremental budget approach and had requested your agency to justify any additional funding above your existing funding level. For this year, we are engaged in what I'm loosely terming zero-based budgeting approach, which does not start with a prior year's fiscal funding level to justify next year's funding level. Rather, we take a deeper look into each agency's budget from the ground up. Given the likelihood of decreased revenues from which to fund government services for our people, we must take a closer look at each and every agency of this government and not be bound to what we already provided in the past. I'm sure some of you Googled zero-based budgeting and found that there is no true consensus in which zero-based budgeting is operationalized. I want to clarify to everyone that what we're using, the approach that we're using and the committee intends on is taking more of a shift in mindset as we continue this budget process. The public should be aware of what was provided in the past is not what the committee will be solely basing decisions in the future. The committee is doing everything it can to show the people of Guam that we are committing to a ground-up approach because the current fiscal environment calls for it. With that, I invite the Department of Labor to come forward and provide their testimony.
Good afternoon. I am providing a written, or had provided a written testimony, and if you would, I will go ahead and read that out. Again, thank you, Speaker Chairman Cruz, for the opportunity for Guam Department of Labor to submit the department's 2019 budget request. The Department of Labor, or GDOL, submitted its budget request on March 26, 2018. The GDOL was established under Public Law 9238 with the mission to foster, promote, and develop the welfare of the wage earners of Guam, to improve their working and living conditions, and to advance their opportunities for occupational training and profitable employment. Guam DOL serves the community of Guam, primarily the wage earners. The other part of the labor formula are the employers, which the department has been working diligently to engage as stakeholders in the successful employment and training of their workforce. In addition, outreach activities have been designed to help businesses understand labor laws to protect workers, which in turn promotes a better working environment and business success. The various services are provided through the following key divisions of the department. Although you are likely familiar with these divisions, I will share briefly the importance of their key functions. The Alien Labor Processing and Certification Division, or well known as ALPCD, shows that Guam is unique in the fact that the Governor of Guam has been granted certifying authority for temporary labor certifications issued in Guam. To protect this very valuable authority, the government of Guam has promulgated rules and regulations to protect against abuse and fraud. The ALPCD was created to oversee the employment of H-2B workers in Guam and monitor employers of such workers. The division has 5 major functions: to review, receive, process, and adjudicate applications for temporary alien labor certifications for Guam. They also register all H-2B workers entering Guam, evidenced by the issuance of an H-2 ID card. They conduct monitoring, surveillance, and investigative activities to prevent violations of the rules and regulations. They compile and maintain records and statistical data, and they also enforce Guam labor laws relative to the employment of alien workers. We also have the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS. Section 48056 of Public Law 9238 established the research and statistics responsibility of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The BLS team conducts independent surveys to study, investigate, collect, and compile statistical information, issuing reports on Guam's labor market conditions. These reports include the following: current labor force, or CLF, which includes statistics on employment, unemployment, and other characteristics of the specified civilian non-institutional population of Guam to ensure proper planning and development of appropriate labor programs. They also do current employment statistics, which includes federally funded state and local planning information, occupational employment statistics program, and they also publish current employment reports and publish results of an annual census of Guam's employers. Occupational safety and health statistics, which includes statistical information to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of the Occupational Safety and Health Act in reducing work-related injuries and illnesses as mandated by Public Law 91-596, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. This is federally funded and operated in cooperation with the U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics. We also have the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, or DOSH, and is tasked with enforcing safety and anti-hazard regulations within the Government of Guam workplace. The general duties of the divisions are to continually review and modify safety standards and rules, and to recommend to the legislature enactment of same, to continually monitor and enforce enacted or temporarily promulgated safety and health standards within the Government of Guam, and to continually assess employee safety, training, and education programs on an agency basis. The operations of DOSH have not been funded since 2011, but despite the limited resources, GDOL assigns a labor law enforcement specialist to help cover the responsibilities required of DOSH. Fair Employment Practice Division, or FEPD, administers and enforces the provisions of Public Law 9-254 to include Fair Labor Standards Act, Title 22 GCA, Chapter 3 and 5, relative to unlawful employment practices, and the Guam Employment Relations Act. The division aims to protect and safeguard the civil rights of all individuals to seek, have access to, obtain and hold employment without discrimination because of race, religious creed, color, national origin, ancestry, physical handicap, medical condition, marital status, sex, and/or age. Employment practices should treat all individuals equally, evaluating each individual only on the basis of bona fide occupational qualification, unless pursuant to permissible defense as enumerated in the law. The FEPD's objectives are to assist private sector employers and employees with allegations of employment discrimination through discussions of infractions, and assist employers to know their legal responsibilities at the workplace to reduce or avoid any form of discrimination. Recently, FEPD has also been designated as the enforcement authority for the Fair Chances Hiring Process Act, which allows for job seekers with criminal histories to get a fair chance at vying for jobs in our community. Wage and Hour Division administers and enforces the provisions of Public Law 5-143, which charges the WHD to administer and enforce Fair Labor Standard Acts promulgated under Title 22, GCA Chapter 3, and child labor laws under Title 19, GCA Chapter 11, to protect workers against unpaid hours worked, whether they are alien workers, U.S. citizens, persons with disability, trainees, or minors. Additionally, under Public Law 26-111, Section 5803, the Wage and Hour Division is charged with the responsibility to monitor compliance within these provisions. We also have the Workers' Compensation Commission, or WCC, which administers and enforces the provision of Public Law 1-80, Title 22, Chapter 9, which is charged to provide compensation for injury, disability, or death to employees arising out of and in the course of their employment. The WCC works to ensure prompt and accurate benefit payments and appropriate timely service to injured employees in order to facilitate their return to gainful employment. They serve as the insurance carrier for workers' comp for the Government of Guam and serve as the ombudsman for public and private employees who have been injured on the job. Guam On-Site OSHA Consulting Services offers cost-free consultation services federally funded by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. Employers are assisted to improve their occupational safety and health management system, identify potential hazards at their work sites, and even qualify for a one-year exemption from routine OSHA inspections. Their annual budget averages at $352,800. The Workforce Development and Training Division, or with the Guam American Job Center, is 100% federally funded, averaging yearly at $3,949,802. The AJC is made possible by the National Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. The Guam AJC is the island's central facility for employment, training, and related services. Services are provided to job seekers, students, and businesses. They are provided access to a convenient, reliable, and up-to-date broad range of coordinated employment, training, and educational service, program information, and resources. The following are grants that support the services to target populations. We have the Guam Employment Service, funded at $311,744. Wagner-Peiser grant supports that. We have Career Services, funded at $2,606,808. That's funded under the WIOA Act. We have the Senior Community Service Employment Program, funded at $893,250. That's a CSEP program. We also have the Disabled Veterans Outreach Program, funded at $138,000. That's the DVOP grant. And we also have the Bureau of Women's Affairs activities that are absorbed by the AJC and related divisions. To further improve workforce development and training functionality, the department began implementing measures to leverage resources, removing duplicated services across employment and training programs, and maximizing the use of technology to better serve our customers. The Higher Guam case management system improved how we do business and improved the processes for our customers. This web-based system allows for self-registration and full use of job seeker or employer services without having to personally visit the American Job Center. This saves time for individuals and businesses, which is evident in the increased number of quote-unquote self-service online activities. The Guam American Job Center in program year 2017 had 791 individuals register for staff-assisted services, a decrease of from 1,798 individuals, or 71% from program year 2016. However, this did not diminish the use of the American Job Center located at the Bell Tower in Anigua. In fact, the AJC reported 5,297 visiting the center in 2016 and 6,326 people visiting the center in 2017, representing a 20% increase. Note that many of the training programs were under the former Agency for Human Resource Development, or AHRD, which was merged with the department several years ago. Guam DOL is a model for how mergers of departments with similar functions may be accomplished. The Guam DOL is seeking for fiscal year 2019 an appropriation level of $2,238,604 for its operation. These funds consist of general fund amount of $2,016,852, $174,752 Manpower Development Fund, and $47,000 for federal match. In totality, a minimal increase of $8,322. Of the fiscal year 2019 appropriation request, $1,596,686, or 71%, is for personnel, and $641,918, or 29%, is for operations. Guam DOL is funded locally at 28% and federally at 72%. Notable points of interest related to the budget request include the following. Decrease in utilities. GDOL typically budgets every fiscal year its overall department telephone costs under the general fund. In preparation for fiscal year 2019, the department will ensure that the federal programs will have sufficient budget and utilities to cover related share of telephone costs. Increase in rental. GDOL will need to issue an invitation for bid, or IFB, for the lease space in January 2019, as the GCIC lease expires in April 2019. To save in facility costs, plans to identify cost-effective location for the American Job Center will be included in the bid. Local training money is limited to MDF funds provided to Guam Community College related to Bill 25034. The department's training demands are supported 100% by federal grants. As the State Apprenticeship Office and as the State Apprenticeship Director, GDOL works with GCC to capitalize on their local MDF funds to support the department's registered apprenticeship training to meet the workforce of employers. Note that the department has increased its engagement with businesses to ensure that wage earners have opportunities to enter the workforce, as well as receive the support they need in the workplace. Guam DOL is pleased to report an increase in business engagement, particularly through the assistance of the Guam American Job Center. A new subunit of the Guam AJC is the Business Services Unit, which provides direct and indirect support to employers. This includes providing resources to help improve placement success for job seekers or trainees. Also, cost-free labor clinics are offered regularly to employers and program orientations for interested workers to help increase knowledge of labor policies or opportunities. Since 2016, there has been a significant increase in the number of individuals and businesses engaged with the Guam AJC. Almost 3,000 people have received orientations to employment and training programs, and there has been an increase of 250%, or a total of 722 businesses now registered with the Guam AJC or HireGuam.com. This is the territory's employment job bank. The Guam Department of Labor continues to work on operational efficiency, capitalizing on existing and new talent, as well as new funding opportunities. The GDOL team looks forward to continue its efforts to improve its regulatory role, as well as employment service and training opportunities for those most in need. Sidus Maasi for the opportunity to present the Guam Department of Labor's 2019 budget request. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I want to thank you for your very thorough testimony. The department, unfortunately, was listed in one of the 300s. And with these 4 pages, you have succinctly been able to explain to the populace outside, when we post this on obguam.org, the reason for which your department with the HRD exists. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't understand what you guys do. And yes. I want to thank you for this testimony. I do have a few questions. You are aware that the governor, in his executive budget request, submitted 2 things, option 1 and option 2. And so these are pro forma questions that I just need to get on the record. Can the Department of Labor operate at its current level under option 2?
With that proposal, with a significant reduction in budget, the answer would be no, sir. We have systematically been able, through right-sizing, decreased a lot of our personnel level. Despite that, also operate at peak level or peak services. So considering the changes that we're anticipating in the future, especially the increase in potential need for our department when it comes to enforcement, with the, let's say the military buildup, increase in workers, increase in business activities, our department's going to be quite busy. Right now, we are anticipating returning back to its original load for the foreign laborers, not to mention maybe the residual auxiliary businesses related to that. We're going to get busy, especially the compliance divisions. So the answer would be no, sir.
Under option 1 and option 2, there is a program coordinator 2 position under the Guam Registered Apprentice Program that includes the name of an employee but does not provide funding for it.
This is for the apprenticeship?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the current in the current staffing pattern, it states this is a warm body. Is it the intent that this position not be funded?
Hold on, sir. If you don't mind, let me just double check with my ASO who has that report with her. Thank you, Helen.
I'm sorry. My name is Helen Mofnas, the ASO. For the program coordinator position, Phyllis DePasnia currently oversees all of the WIOA training programs. So through time and effort, we have charged her to the federal programs accordingly to look at some cost-saving measures and right-sizing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I wish more of the departments would leave people in the federally funded positions and not migrate them over to the general fund. Under option 1, the Department of Labor has a request for what you've dubbed as printers/automobiles/computers maintenance for $12,000 in the director's office. Do you want to break that down for me and try to explain how you have a maintenance contract with 3 different things, printers, automobiles, and computers?
I'm going to ask my ASO to help further break that down. I only have the summary sheet in front of me, sir.
I'll go ahead and break it down. That's primarily for our copier machines, our leases with the copier machines.
Are there any automobiles, and how many automobiles?
No, we have no lease for automobiles. Our automobiles are outright purchased, and most of them are under federal programs.
Okay, so then it being included, this is just the, this should just be maintenance
Correct.
of contracts?
Yes.
Okay. Under option 1, the Department of Labor has a request for a printing requirement of $6,700 in the director's office. This was not funded in 18. What is the additional printing requirement DOL is anticipating in 19?
For FY19, because of our reduction in the Manpower Development Fund, we had moved a lot of the printing costs for like workers' comp, when they need some printing materials, BLS when they need some printing materials, so we kind of shifted that over for printing costs.
But now you just want it under the, you want that under the director's office?
Yes, we have moved all operations to the director's office so we can track for all the divisions who need it accordingly.
I noticed that in your budget, there's a new division of occupational safety and health being funded with 1 employee position entitled Labor Law Enforcement Specialist 3 for a total compensation of $58,000. This position was transferred from the Alien Labor Processing and Certification Division to this division? Was that a transfer from Alien Labor?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
And can you provide justification for the creation of this new division?
Well, the DOSH has always been a division under the department, but when I had entered the department, the position unfortunately was not filled. It was always, the task was always delegated as needed to labor law enforcement individual. Because of the increased activities that we're anticipating, I thought it would be best to assign 1 person directly for that because they do serve the government of Guam.
Oh, I apologize. I see it's in the middle of the second page, a full explanation of its justification. Okay. The Alien Labor Processing and Certification Division funding request for $223,834 is a reduction as compared to 2018 due to the transfer of the 1 employee to DOSH. With 1 less employee, can this division operate efficiently for the next fiscal year?
I probably would have to have Greg answer that. You probably would have heard him before. As it stands right now, you know, he's been a great administrator in being able to work with the resources that he has now in anticipation in the future, you know, which is one of the reasons why we've been in discussion about this. Currently, we do have through the miscellaneous provisions, prohibition against unclassified employees, where there's an exemption to have certain workers like our survey workers. We would like to have the senators consider in the future allowing LTAs to be able to take on this additional workforce in the future, let's say through that we anticipate. So as of right now, we're fine, but moving forward, we would like to see the option of being able to bring in, based on temporary need, temporary base or workload, LTAs funded by the MDF once that, let's say, once we see the movement of money going up and activities in the department. Right now, we wouldn't be able to hire. The only ones that we can are survey workers. So I guess indirectly to answer your question is right now where we stand, we're fine, but as we're anticipating increased activities, we're going to be needing, or especially that division is going to need additional assistance. But the only way to do it is to probably bring in LTAs specific to the workload and the increased activities at the ALPCD.
And would that require authorization from us, or is that purely executive?
It's going to be in need of, requires authorization. Yeah, right now we
You
only...
mean there was some way that in the last several years I could have stopped all the LTAs? I have been trying for years to put a halt to it. And I keep being told that it is not within my power to do that.
I think having had worked in various agencies and working now with the Department of Labor, there is value with LTAs. Like for the American Job Center, when workload starts rising based on, for me, it's always based on the ability of a person and skills, bringing them in specifically for those, for when certain workload or work tasks are needed, when activity starts going up. LTAs can serve those needs, like survey workers, when you suddenly have that peak where you have to suddenly have a large number of survey workers coming in to conduct the studies in Gary Howe's division. And then as that need starts dipping, then, those can go away.
Well, I mean, I understand that. And my problem with LTAs was during the last election cycle. I think you were in the legislature when there was discussion about LTAs, and one of the LTAs at Department of Labor was rooming with one of my employees and proudly announced that she was really happy about being picked up as an LTA at Department of Labor and that she's part of the phone banking.
Well, I will share that that's not occurring. I have been one of the big changes that I had implemented at the department is that, because usually what happens is that, I guess historically, when people are looking for certain positions, they look for where the job opportunities lie. For us, the job opportunities, it's not about the job, it's the opportunity to take advantage of some training programs. Coincidentally, at the American Job Center, when anybody even calls me up or calls anybody up and they're asking, well, do you have a job there, whatnot, my focus is, what exactly do you want to do? Are you looking for employment? And do you need to be trained up? And we have programs that are immediately available for that. And that has worked really successfully, where they have to register into our system. They're assessed, and then we find agencies or businesses out there who will open the doors, and then we move them in as work experience clients. So they're not picked up as LTAs, they're actually picked up as trainees, and then they end up getting jobs, actually. So that is how we're handling that. So if anybody can speak to this, even my ASO here knows that I'm very, very, very particular when it comes to consideration of any LTAs. I move them to training opportunities or direct employment through our programs.
The Guam Registered Apprentice Program was funded in 2018, but there's no request for funding in 19.
Say again?
Is there a reason for that? Your Guam Registered Apprentice Program was funded in 2018, but not requested in 19. And I'm just wondering...
Yeah, it's the same thing with that Phyllis's position.
Oh,
Phyllis
That's the Phyllis Topasnia
it's
position.
a federal. Okay,
Yes.
great. I'll let your oversight chair have questions, and then Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Senator and Helen, for being here. Bill 250 was signed into law yesterday, and now that it's signed into law, how might the budget of DOL be impacted by the possibility that, despite the exemptions that were on the increased fee, that there might be increased revenue in the next fiscal year due to this increased fee?
I'm sorry, Senator, what was the question? As far as the impact?
Yeah, so now that 250 is law, I know that there were certain provisions that we wrote into the bill that allowed DOL to utilize some of these additional funds for legal services, for research, for training, for staff, and other purposes. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of expand on that.
I know that when the bill was originally entered, there was an increase in the percentage from 30 to 50% that we had requested, because considering the pattern of the amounts that we would be anticipating, 30% would not be enough to bring in to fully support legal counsel, nor additional local training monies. Because the first 100%, or excuse me, 100,000 chunk goes to BLS immediately for them to do their studies. Any residual or balance then we can use. Based on the anticipated numbers of foreign laborers we're anticipating with MDF, our projection is that we would probably be able to come out with a residual of 50,000. So now in the future that might change, but as of right now for the next fiscal year, we're looking at 50,000, may go a little bit more than that, because it's really 30%. We would be receiving 30% of the projected amount, and of that 30%, 100,000 goes to BLS. And everything, the balance just goes to MDF, which ALPCD falls under ALPCD, and we use that internally at our discretion. But it certainly is not enough for legal counsel or for training. We would have liked to had a larger percentage. Then we would have been able to carve out a dollar amount to move into as local training monies that would not have the same kind of restrictions that our federal funding has. They're very strict on how we can use our federal funds, whereas if we had local funding, we'd be able to be a lot more flexible to meet needs that the federal funds cannot immediately address. Let me see if there's anything else. The impact also would be additional work. I do know that ALPCD will have to start their special process of tracking which companies will be entitled to which will be required to pay the 1,000 or the 2,000, and not to mention those who are exempt, and those who are exempted, if they bring in workers, they have to do an increased monitoring to make sure that those workers are in fact working at because they got the exemption, right? They didn't have to pay that extra 1,000. So there are situations, we anticipate, Greg is good at brainstorming and seeing scenarios that could occur, of which a company theoretically could be serving both a military project and a non-military project. So he has to go out there, we have to go out there and monitor, making sure that on Cruz is not crossing over and working at another military project where they would have had to pay 2,000 versus 1,000. So there's going to be added work for ALPCD. But because we're tracking at about the same amount that we've had in the previous years, we're looking at only about an extra 50,000.
And I'll also be monitoring the tracking of the revenues that go to both GCC and DOL, and we might need to address these budgets if that money comes in this fiscal year. Also, just reviewing the budget, it looks like that DOL will be losing 2 employees in fiscal year 2019, and I understand that you're losing a number of employees, or you have in the past weeks and months, and they represent a lot of institutional knowledge for the agency. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about succession planning and what you have in terms of both succession planning and training for your current employees at DOL.
Thank you for bringing that up. Helen knows very well, and among my other division leads know very much how I constantly remind them about a succession plan for them. Helen, how many days did you say, Helen, you have left?
1,300. Yes, I'm counting too.
So in fact, there's some individuals in this room who are here purposely because of succession. That's one. Yes, we have through attrition and or retirement have had some institutional knowledge move on beyond the department. Fortunately, I'd like to, it opens up opportunities for bringing in new blood, new thoughts, new creativity. One of them happens to be here in the room. He is our administrator for our Fair Employment Practice Division. And because of that, because of our inability to bring in right away a wage and hour administrator, he has been tasked to help oversee this division, working with our existing labor law enforcement specialists to cross-train across the divisions. I'm happy to report that that division works not only with the USDOL EEOC office in Honolulu. We have an MOU that's being reviewed right now, renewed with the USDOL Wage and Hour division. They have a local office here. We've had meetings in the last few weeks where they are willing to do cross-training with us and actually also sharing of caseloads depending on complexities or applicability, which division or which agency who should handle. So we're capitalizing on as much resources as we can in order to cover the workload. So that's how we're addressing that. For succession plan, I will tell you that Government of Guam has a process through its existing HR management. We have job descriptions. We have our individual employment plan. Individual development plan that each person that I have in our division have to have in their jacket, and part of that is to constantly challenge them to improve themselves and so that they are constantly so they're not stagnant. So succession plan is tied into also our personnel evaluation.
Thank you. We know that DOL has been tasked with many mandates, and including enforcing and administering these labor laws, as well as data collection and research. So I think I'd just say that I'm concerned that GDOL won't be able to perform at its optimum with the increasing amounts of retirement and turnover that you've been talking about. And since DOL is our labor agency, do you have any suggestions in addition to that? I know you were talking a little bit about CEUs and other things, but that might help us to address that.
Well, I'm hoping that if not this fiscal year, the next fiscal year, that it's going to be considered to return some of the positions that we do certainly need, especially the administration side of it. We are trying our best within our capacity to be able to operate within our means. I will share that the existing staff has been really, have really stepped up to the plate. I'm really proud of those individuals, especially the ones who are fairly new to the department, who have that new drive to be able to improve the divisions. And they have proven to be successful. But yes, you're right, I am concerned as things get picked up, which is why I was suggesting that would help to look at the whole notion of the LTAs for when job tasks are needed, when those peaks are needed. And as far as our operations, we've been able to handle the load that we have with the existing individuals that we have now. Would we like to have more? Of course. Would I like to have more specialized experts in the division? Of course. But it's important that we do keep those staffing lines and that we do look at in the future funding, especially those critical administrative positions. Supported staff can be helped through LTAs, perhaps.
Okay, that's helpful. You talked a little bit about training within the department. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about training our outside workforce. So can you tell me a little bit about the training programs that are currently available at DOL?
Are you talking about the training through our American Job Center? Oh, okay, sure. Okay. Two things. As I mentioned earlier, we have those who are seeking jobs, and we have employers who are needing to hire those job seekers, hopefully. So for the employers, we do offer cost-free labor clinics. Those are free training that's available in our calendar, our events calendar on our website, and businesses continuously register.
And that's hireguam.com.
That's actually handled through our Department of Labor, our main website first. And in our main website, GDOL website, there is an events calendar, and that is managed by the Business Services Unit.
Okay.
And that is where people can register to take short classes on fair labor laws, learn about workers' comp. In fact, we invite our partners from our federal officials like OFCCP and even the Wage and Hour USDOL. They've been very gracious to come and also participate in those free labor clinics. The other side of the formula is the training for the job seekers. Now that's 100% federally funded based on target populations, whether they're disabled or veterans or priority service needs, like veterans, individuals with disabilities. We have another program that's focused on youth and adults, and of course the senior citizens. And so all of those programs are available under the umbrella of the American Job Center and in partnership with our mandated partners, which is Guam Community College and the Department of Vocational Rehab. Because at the end of the day, we all are receiving federal funding. They're all asking for the same thing. Performance outcomes as far as, are these people receiving credentials? Are these people receiving employment? And have they moved up the wage salary as a result of their employment and training? That's a lot of reporting, so that's why that partnership is needed. The training is available. Various trainings are available through our training providers. That includes Guam Community College, University of Guam, Guam Trades Academy, Marianas, Guam Marianas training. We even have New Horizons and even Esmudzao. So they are falling under our various training providers to meet the training needs of these individuals to get them ready to get into the workplace. The challenge, again, because they are federally funded, there are strict criterias that we have to abide by.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
During this morning's budget hearing with the Department of Revenue and Tax, there was a specific software that was mentioned in their budget, and it was called the FAST-E GBPS point-to-point DOL to DOA data. They were unable to answer some of these questions, but I know that you might be able to answer some of these. And can you provide us some details about this software? And is it necessary for us to receive federal grants?
For that particular one, I am not quite aware. It could be the name of a process that is responding to one of our needs. Guam does not receive unemployment insurance, so it's very difficult for us to receive information as far as wages for employees. That's how we track. For instance, if a person goes through training, they move from $9 to $10, the only way we can find that out is a phone call, and it's very challenging. Other states use unemployment, their system, to be able to get that information. The only way that we can at this point is to try to work with Revenue, DRT. And so I have been in communication with them for the last year or so, and they have been compiling that information for us to merge and get it. The only challenge that we have is the confidentiality. We certainly don't want to breach that. So but they have been willing to work with us so that we can have the number of individuals, participants that we have in our list with that we need to find that data that happens to be sitting at DRT. So that may be it.
Yeah, it was my understanding that this is what is required for us to access the WIOA grant funding, and then that was the piece that we needed to comply. So
okay, that might be it. I can verify. I can check.
Please,
Senator,
and if you could let the committee know, just so that we're kind of all on the same sheet of music as far as that's concerned. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of points I just need to clarify. You say that Guam DOL is funded locally at 28%, federally funded at 72%. Let's call it 30-70. And so based upon that, the total funding for a DOL is around $9 to $10 million altogether. That's fair? Right. Okay, good enough. And so what you're requesting really is about a 2.2 locally funded. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't have any question. I guess, well, I do have one question. In terms of the H-2 issue, are you made aware as to what the anticipated number of H-2 workers that would be necessary for next year alone, or that, is being applied for? Because I believe the cap right now is at 4,000, right, is what they're saying. But I don't think they're all coming in at the same time, right? They're all not going to come in next year. Do you have any idea of what the manpower requirement would be, or what the anticipated manpower requirement would be just for next year alone?
I can say that when we did the impact report, we had projected, and by the way, Greg, you could jump in if you'd like, if you don't mind, sir. We had projected, when we did the impact report, about 4,700 for annually for a number of years. I think we were looking at 3-year cycle, about 4,700 a year. With the NDAA, they capped it at 4,000. And as we anticipate, excuse me, Greg, I don't have that report. Would you mind sharing what we're expecting for next year?
I didn't bring the document I needed, but I have something similar. I think we're expecting about 4,300 for next year based off of DoD's projections of what their manpower needs are. That probably would be close to around the number to be inclusive of what we would need for outside the fence stuff. But yeah, it's going to jump from this year would be probably, we expect to be at about 1,500 or 1,600 and jump up to about 4,300 next year.
We're talking about foreign labor.
Foreign laborers, yes.
Foreign labor, so that would be in addition to what we have on the ground, which is zero.
It's a huge jump, yes.
Right, but you just said right now, this year you have 1,500.
We expect this year for it to rise to about 1,500. Now, keep in mind,
This fiscal year or this calendar year?
Calendar year is what we're looking at.
this 18 fiscal year.
18.
I think by the end of October, we should be up to about 1,500.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we have
again,
13. Right now we have 1,300 requests that are in at USCIS right now, waiting on approval. So I
Okay.
think by October we're going to get a few hundred more.
Okay, and the only reason I'm asking that question, I'm trying to do the calculation in my head because of the law that was just passed and signed by the governor, which increases the fees for
Correct.
these. And I'm just trying to get to that figure because you mentioned that you're going to be getting 30% of that, right?
Right,
Is that how this
and we had
works?
spoken about that earlier, and trying not to count our eggs before they hatch because there's only been 600 approvals right now.
Right.
We don't know how the GCA lawsuit thing is going to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a significant piece.
Okay.
There is an exemption for military projects through the NDAA, but filings have been slow. There's been that chilling effect for 2 years, and the ice hasn't completely, melted from that chilling effect. So I expected employers to start coming in droves, and it's just the pace
Okay.
is kind of slow still.
Okay.
So we're only counting the chickens we've got right now, and not the ones that haven't hatched yet.
And I understand it, but again, it was more for calculation purposes because going forward, when we set the budget or when we get to the budget time in July or August, right, we want to try to at least anticipate what is a reasonable expectation of funds that will be coming into the government so that when we, and I know it's probably it's appropriated out in the bill already as to certain agencies get certain amounts. So just for the back of my mind, I just wanted to make sure that, if there was kind of a ballpark figure, we have.
We kind of didn't want to overestimate.
Right, and I don't like overestimating either.
Right now,
but-
based on the approvals that are there, it's consistent with what's in the budget. I think which is 500, a little bit over 500,000.
over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now keep in mind with Bill 250, I don't know what the public law number is yet, but with the exemptions built in, at least what we're seeing right now, all of those would be covered under the exemptions of the projects already being let. Now that'll filter out, in 6 to 8 months probably or so
Okay.
with new projects coming in.
Okay.
But again, right now we're basically counting it at just that same old rate until we
Okay.
see some of that newer stuff come in.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator, thank you very much, and I thank all your staff for being here this afternoon. Oh, do you have any other questions? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. And your excuse so that you can get back to work. And oh, wait, there's a question.
Well, just one last question, and it's not totally related to the budget, but maybe it is. We know that the Apprenticeship Training Act is set to expire by the end of this year, but by next year. And I know that, several employers who participate in that program have asked me to extend that if possible. What are your thoughts on that?
I know that that has been a major incentive for employers to participate in the registered apprenticeship, and they have been very pleased with it. And I've actually met a bunch of apprentices who have gone through the training. The nice thing, in my opinion, the nice thing about it is other than the benefits that the businesses receive, they end up getting a lot of loyal employees who stay with the company. And it has been an incentive for us to attract new businesses to come in and train up. Again, the registered apprenticeship are for businesses who have employees that they want to move up the ladder and improve their wage situation. and it could be as minimum as 6 months to a few years to get the training for those particular positions. Employers are, as a matter of fact, I've met with other apprenticeship directors from other states. They're envious. They don't have that in their states because they want to have employers also coming, running, knocking to their, at their doors to participate. So I think it is a good thing.
And just for everybody's information, this is essentially 100% federally funded. Well, the program is, I guess, meant 50-50, right? 50% funded by the federal government and 50% funded by the local employers?
No.
No?
What happens is that the percentage of, the tax break that they receive is related to their internal costs that incur. For instance, if they have a supervisor who's working, who's overseeing that journeyman, then 50% of his salary can count towards that tax incentive. Or if they have to purchase some PPEs or protective equipment for their staff, or something that they would need in order to train that staff, it's whatever's the cost that's associated on the job training at the work site. So that's the tax credit that they're receiving.
Oh, so
their
it's a tax credit
contribution.
is what it is.
Say
I
again?
see. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, as far as the training monies, that let's say the training happens at New Horizon or Guam Marianas Training or Trades Academy or GCC, the cost that you usually hear about is that MDF money that has landed that is given to Guam Community College to pay for those classes. Now, keep in mind that some of the apprenticeship training has occurred at like Trades Academy. So how did they get some of their payment? They had partnered with GCC, so that some of that money gets funneled to pay some of those trainings. Right now, companies either pay for their apprenticeship training, the actual classes, or they seek out MDF money to pay for some of those classes, or they seek out the grant that Department of Labor has received to pay for apprenticeship training.
Okay. Again, I did call you, and I did say that I was interested in introducing the bill. We do have a bill prepared. Perhaps we can meet
Yes.
within this week sometime to take a
Absolutely.
look at it. And I think there may be a few concerns.
Sure.
Just we can iron it out. But I understand it is a good program. And
Yes, it is.
Again, with all the realignment happening coming forward, I believe that there is a lot of good training that could take place under
Yes.
this.
And Senator,
this program.
if you may, just because it's available, not all employers participate in it because it is time consuming. They have to document every minute and hour there, the supervisors involved with that journeyman, the person that's on training. It's a lot of paperwork. And some companies, for them, they don't have the capacity, or they're not, or they work with another organization to help them monitor all of that. So there is a price internally for them to get that tax credit. It's a lot of paperwork of tracking because we have to verify that the percent, because they're asking for 50%. Is 50% of the salary of that supervisor that's overseeing that person, let's say equipment or stuff that they need to provide that training at the work site? We verify all of that in order for us to certify that credit is valid.
Okay. I appreciate it. We'll have a good conversation
All right.
in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dominguez in the Bureau of Statistics and Plan. Please, you're recognized.
Hafday, good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Senator Visco Lee. Glad to be here. want to thank you for having us so we can present our FY 2019 budget request to you and justify it. And I submitted this document, and I just want to brief you on this document. It's the first 6 pages of the document is the budget testimony. I won't read all of it because it'd be time consuming. So, and what I did was I added, it's 6 pages, and then I added 21 pages of an appendix, and it describes all that we do, the mandates, the objectives, the tasks, the metrics that you asked for, Mr. Speaker, the metrics, and even the list of employees in each division, including their position titles and whether they're locally funded or federally funded. So I won't go through that, obviously. But first, so let me read the mission statement of the Bureau. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me introduce the leadership team of the Bureau. Behind me is Mr. Manny Cruz, our Deputy Director. And next to me is our ASO, Terry Quabo. And then at the end of the table here on the right is Albert Perez, our Chief Economist. Next to him is Edwin Rages. He's the administrator of our Guam Coastal Management Program. It is a 100% federally funded division of the Bureau. And then to my next to Terry here is Lola Leon Guerrero. She's our Chief Planner. And also she oversees our Socioeconomic Planning Program Division. And then next to her is Monica Guerrero. She's our planner for and manages our Planning Information Program Division. Yeah, I think that's everyone. Thank you. So anyway, the mission statement of the Bureau is to ensure resources are effectively used for the benefit of present and future generations by appraising, coordinating, preparing, and assisting in the development of a wide range of plans, policies, studies, and statistics that further economic, social, land use, environmental, and infrastructure goals, priorities, and planning activities. Here are some of the things that we do, and of course, again, if you look at the document I submitted, it goes into more detail. We publish the Consumer Price Index, import and export trade data reports. We publish the annual statistic yearbook. Looks like this. And the Guam Facts and Figures at a Glance brochure and other statistical indices for policymakers, researchers, and businesses to make sound decisions to improve Guam's economic viability and resource sustainability. We provide technical support to GovGuam agencies when needed in order that they meet their missions. We are currently collaborating with the United States Census Bureau and other stakeholders on Guam in the planning of the 2020 census, which will bring an estimated $10 million in economic activity to Guam in 2019 and 2020. We secure federal dollars from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Department of Interior to compile commercial fishery data, coral reef, coastal, and environmental conservation initiatives. We prepare the annual Compact Impact Report to identify and assess the cost incurred for services to the freely associated states migrants on Guam, and the report looks something like this. We plan and oversee that are planning and overseeing the 20 enumeration of the FAS migrants on Guam in collaboration with the Office of Insular Affairs, Department of Interior, and the United States Census Bureau. That project should start at the end of July. We provide technical support to GITA on the development of a new comprehensive economic development strategy. We provided technical assistance to the Department of Agriculture to update the 2017 Marine Conservation Plan. We develop and coordinate Guam's FY 2017 through 2020 Drug Control, Violent Crime, and Criminal Justice Systems Improvement Grant Program. We serve as the catalyst for planned and balanced growth through intergovernmental reviews via the Guam State Clearinghouse, legislative review of bills, and the mandated review process via the comprehensive development plans. We participate in the Application Review Committee, Guam Land Use Committee, and the Federal Consistency Reviews, and we provide GIS mapping services to ensure sustainable and well-planned development efforts are central to protecting Guam's natural resources. For the past 23 years, we've coordinated the Guam International Coastal Cleanup, which cleans up our shores and marine resources. And finally, we conduct education and environmental awareness with schools and community outreach programs, such as the Guardians of the Reef, Eyes of the Reef, the Pig Hunting Derby, the Pork in the Park Cook-Off, to promote best management practices in protecting Guam's coastal environment and to balance sustainable use of resources. So that is in a nutshell many of the things we do, but we actually do much more than that, and that's contained in this document that I delivered to you earlier. The Bureau of Statistics and Plans is organized into 5 divisions, namely Administration, Socioeconomic Planning Program, Planning Information Program, Business Economics Statistics Program, and the Guam Coastal Management Program. The Bureau is seeking a FY 2019 appropriation level of $1,251,880. Here are some of the bullet points regarding this request. The FY 2019 budget request funds 18 full-time employees under 4 locally funded programs. No vacant positions requested to be funded in FY 2019. Total employees within the Bureau of Statistics and Plans are 34 FTEs, consisting of 18 locally funded and 16 federally funded staff. In addition to the mandates and tasks implemented under the 4 locally funded programs and divisions, BSP administers $9,001,314 in active federal grants spread out amongst 27 individual grants. And then the next bullet point covers the different kinds of grant programs that we administer. Includes, again, the Coastal Management Program, the Coral Reef Conservation Program, the Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program, Residential Substance Abuse and Treatment Program, the Western Pacific Fisheries Grant Program, the Coral Reef Initiative Grant Program, Fish Import Data and Monitoring Grant Program, the Paul Coverdale Forensic Science Improvement Grant Program, again, the Burn Justice Assistance Solicited Prison Rape Elimination Grant Program, the Interjurisdictional Fisheries Act Grant Program, and the Financial Administration of the Guam Development Disabilities Council Grant Program. In comparison to our 2018 approved budget, there was a slight increase in operational costs from $50,987 to $62,870, a difference of $11,883, of which this amount is in office space rental, which specifically covers the office space rental for the Guam Development Disabilities Council. Approximately $22,000 in BSP's FY 2018 budget was earmarked to provide a subsidy to the Guam Development Disabilities Council to cover their operational costs. In FY 2019, this dedicated amount will increase to $33,883. GDDC is currently in transition to move to another office space, thus the amount of funding for office space rental may be reduced depending on the cost of their office space in eventual office space in 2019. And that concludes my statement. We'll just go into answer any questions you might have regarding the different divisions and the requests for funding in each of those divisions, Mr. Speaker.
Well, when you file 6 pages and a 21-page appendix, maybe I shouldn't have given you the additional time. No, I'm really, really proud of the work that you guys do.
Thank you.
Your yearbook, I was just amazed with the work that is done in there and all the work that is done with the employees that you have. I guess it might have been no secret that I had been contemplating that Let me first preface this one quick. I noticed in your presentation, you did not cite any specific statute as to where your mission came from.
Yes, that's true, but I believe it's in the appendix.
What is the... I'm trying to figure out whether or not you guys were statutorily created or whether or not you were just something created by one of the administrations.
I apologize for the delay.
Well, I don't feel bad that you can't find your statutory basis, because I was having problems, and I was told that you guys were a creature of Guadeloupe.
That's the postal. This is the Bureau of Planning. Page 14, second paragraph. The core statutory authority of GCMP is derived from Title V Guam Code Annotated Chapter 1, Office of the Governor 2, Centralized Planning and Programmatic, the Final Impact State.
That's the coastal zone management.
It's in our budget.
But the Bureau... No, I understand, but it does not.
It's Public Law 12200.
Okay. So I was trying to figure out where you guys came from. No, the reason why I looked at the excellent work that all of you do and did with this presentation, and I realized that the people that you have are the people that revenue and taxation needs with gigantic NEEDS. They're unable to follow through with any kind of, you have program, they just can't. They can't publish anything. You guys do a statistical plan. Albert comes out monthly with a report. I can't get them to respond. I almost feel like I need to just take this department and put it at revenue and taxation so that you will be, all of these individuals who do phenomenal work. Your ASO started up a nonprofit organization while working, and it's now bigger than your agency. So I know the capability of the people that you have in there, and I've always admired the work that Albert has provided to us and all of the other work that comes up. But really, seriously, is there any way that you can convince the governor that you can and should be a division of revenue and taxation, so that all of you guys can assist in trying to move through the different programs? Because I don't want to do it statutorily. I want this, the governor's had all of these brilliant ideas in the past of merging departments. He got Department of Chamorro Affairs and put 5 people under that. He's got another agency that he put but revenue and taxation needs help, and I can't think of 44 more competent individuals that could really assist in revenue generating so that this government can have sufficient funds, and to think about the people in this agency, because you have a proven track record.
About an hour ago, I called the managers into my office, and I told them, when we go to the legislature in front of the committee and present our budget, I want you to feel very comfortable that we earn our keep and we bring value to the taxpayers of Guam. Just keep that in mind. And so, and I truly believe that, Mr. Speaker and Senators.
No, I mean, I do too. And that's why I'm saying the government needs help. And I don't know if you watched that hearing this morning, but it was a disaster. And we really need the individuals with the caliber of your staff to assist in moving through so that when the legislature passes a bill to address the collection of taxes or how to be able to collect taxes for short-term rental or bed and breakfast, that it can be done within 2 months as opposed to not even started 3 years later, or Cigarette Tax Act that could fund our Healthy Futures Fund to give us more money for cancer and the hospital. We need that kind of assistance at public health, at revenue and taxation. And I'm just wondering whether or not, are you a member of the strike task force?
Yes, I am.
Can you volunteer your people to help?
Not at this time.
Well, then I'll have to do it statutorily. All right. Anyway.
Mr. Director, if I just make a comment, Mr.
Yes.
Speaker, if I may. So I think, while it is a great idea to be able to find efficiencies through aligning certain functions of the Bureau, some of the things within our wheelhouse, their focus, like for example, my program is on land and natural resource planning and being able to provide information when people need to make decisions regarding a particular development, for example. And so those are a statutorily approved program that has a specific focus that may not be, to fit into taxation and collection and those kind of things.
No, I was
right
thinking
now.
about you guys being either going to Department of Land Management or EPA. Both need help. And if you watched the land management hearing yesterday, which was equally disastrous, your personnel would be able to assist them in making sure that they can assist. Or even with this morning's discussion with revenue and taxation, the Department of Land Management's cadastral readings and registrations can't speak to rev and tax, and so we have thousands of John Does in the property tax rolls.
Absolutely. There's many inefficiencies, and one of the core functions of the program is to be able to be the catalyst for coordination.
And I'm wanting to say that you guys need to go out there and not just sit in your little cubicles up at Adelup, but to help with the rest of this government, because I assure you, unless we can get revenue and taxation up and collections up, there's going to be major cuts. And if we have to go with the way that the priorities are set, with you at 300, I don't care if you have 30 pages here. It's 207. Oh my. We're not going to have we're not going to have the rest of the operations of government. I really need help. But anyway, I digress. I just need help. I see all the work that you guys do, and it's exemplary. That department just needs help with program coordinators that can move things from A to just to B. I'm not even asking it to get to Z. Just off the dime. Anyway, there's the governor. I have a list of questions that the committee staff has asked that I get answered on the record. The governor submitted 2 options in the budget, the executive budget request. Can the Bureau of Statistics and Plan operate at its current level under option 2 of the budget?
I consider the Bureau today to be lean. And The answer is, I don't believe so. If we had to work in that budget, I would have to approach the governor and tell him that we would run out of funding by, say, August of 2019. And I'd have to ask his help, or for him to make some kind of a decision, help me make some kind of a decision to be able to live within that significantly lower budget. But I would tell you this afternoon that no, something would suffer at the Bureau. And
yeah, we keep trying to figure out how the option 2 was put together, and I'm sure you had a hand in it, and we're trying to figure out how you were going to be able to operate when your option 2 didn't have rent.
One moment.
You didn't provide for rent in your option 2.
Speaker,
and that's not maybe for your department, but it's division of
GDDC?
Yeah.
GDDC?
But I'm just saying.
Well, the way we proposed our option 2 budget was all the operations amounts were intact, and funding for personnel for warm bodies would run out on August 10th, 2019.
I understand. Yeah. And you would have funded your personnel but had nothing to operate. So, how are we supposed to make the decision when we look at this thing?
With our option 2, we could have eliminated all of our operations to extend the warm bodies further from August 10th, but the way we proposed it, we didn't affect operational cost.
In option 1? In
option 1 and 2.
And 2.
But in option 2, you don't have anything for your copiers, office supplies, toners, office rent, or or mileage. You took that all out.
No, this is the option 2 that we have. I'm not sure what you're referencing, but on our option 2 that was submitted to BBMR, we have a summary page. We underfunded personnel just to stay within our budget.
If you have a document that shows that we reduced our operational costs, and it doesn't match ours, I do recall saying that we, at the time that it was first presented to me, that we would do it, that we would really cut back on our operational costs, so that we could keep the level of funding for personnel as high as we possibly could, because personnel is 96% of our budget.
I understand, but when you have all the personnel in the world and you have no office space and you have nothing to work with because you didn't fund for the operational cost of copiers, paper, and everything else.
How could we get work done? Yes.
Well, Speaker, just to clarify, even if you compare our budget request from FY 17, 18, and 19, BSP has always taken the approach of our due diligence to maximize the use of our federal dollars. A lot of our operational expenses, we offset and we cover it with amongst the 27 active federal grants. So even to a point when federal auditors come in, they say, why is your copier machine 100% federally funded? How are you making copies for your local programs? And we say, you have to allocate a nominal amount to show that there is the government share for your locally funded programs. So although we funded 6,783 for a copier machine, you'll look at 17, the amount that we actually spent is very nominal, because we still look at ways for any copy. All of our printing is done under federal funds. We try to minimize the impact of our general fund. We understand the bigger picture. And like the director said, when we proposed our budget, it's just covering warm bodies. We're not asking to fund any vacant positions. And like Department of Labor earlier, we're always looking at ways to detail people to federal grants to offset. Even in 2010, when we had our $10 million in our the census program, we detailed 2 locally funded personnel there to free up over $100,000 in general fund monies. In 2020, we plan to do that. We plan to look at ways, if there's monies that we could charge that are typically locally funded to any federal program, we will. Because we understand as a staff agency to the governor, working directly with BBMR, that there's a bigger impact. And we understand, we're not asking, this is a bare bone budget. And,
no, I understand, and it's that mindset that
Correct.
I wish was at some of the other agencies. Trying to say that I wish there were people that thought that same
Sure.
way in the others. And so, again, I go back to, I wish that I could detail all of you out to help where we really need help. I mean, you're doing phenomenal work. Again, we'll say that a dozen times. It's just I need help with revenue and taxation. And I'm trying to figure out whether or not there's a way that your strike force can make recommendations that your people be detailed up there for a short period to just assist in moving some of the programs through. Just the help in the cigarette tax thing to move that off square one would provide $10 million into the Healthy Futures Fund. If we could help in trying to get, you guys had an app at one point to have all of the property on Guam done, and I keep trying to figure out why they can't do that at revenue and taxation. But that was done by a small staff that you guys have. So I'm just saying, you're on the strike force. You can't all just live in your silos and protect your kingdom, because the world is going to end, you know. If we don't start collecting enough money, there's not going to be enough money for warm bodies, much less anything else.
Well, this is Monica Guerrero, and she manages our Planning Information Program division. And Monica and her team and I and the deputy, we're gearing up for the COFA, the 2018 COFA enumeration, which by federal law is required to be done every 5 years. We need to know the count of the FAS citizenry in Guam, because the percentage of the $30 million that is out there every year depends on the count. And so we're up against Hawaii, the CNMI, and then American Samoa. And I was told that nearly 5 years ago, when the count was done, we lost almost $1 million to Hawaii. And that's $1 million per year, not $1 million over a 5-year period.
I understand, but the thing is that trying to get the federal government to change that $30 million to what should be $300 million, is it a wise investment of their time to be the hamster in the wheel, just constantly turning out these reports? It doesn't matter what the statements say. They're not going to increase it over the $13 or the $14 million. And we've been trying to get the federal government to say, then tell us how the report ought to be written, what the formula is. And I don't know how many DOI grants we've gotten to try to write that, and they won't tell us. You know, it really is, it's exasperating. But the thing is that we need to help ourselves with revenue collection. You know, the effort that is made on that to try to justify an additional $500,000 of whether it's 13.5 or 13.8, I would much rather it go to trying to move the cigarette tax thing off point A into implementation and get 10 million annually. Or other things that need to be done up there. They really need help.
Well, I have been attending the tax commission meetings. I do enjoy attending
Not
them.
the tax commission meeting, the strike task force. The governor put together a strike task force because he knew that these two audits were coming down from the OPA that was going to completely pan the operation at revenue taxation. And so they had the strike task force to try to figure out how to address the soft spots and to improve collections. Please invite yourself to the next strike task force meeting and offer the brilliant personnel that you have in your department to assist.
I will take that into consideration with all due respect.
Talking about federal grants, how you guys oversee fisheries too, right?
Let me pass it on to Monica.
Yes, we do.
There was a OPA report that said that Department of Agriculture had to return $7 million a couple of last 2 years in fisheries in federal grants.
We don't oversee all fisheries grants, Speaker. We just oversee the WPAC and the IFA and the Sultan Stowe Kennedy. That could be one of their grants under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, possibly. I'm not too sure what grant that is. Well, we oversee under the National Marine Fisheries Service. It could be a different grant.
And then again, that's the other thing that I'm trying to get at, is where at Adelup or in the government is there a centralized body or person that oversees all the federal grants that are out there, that calls agriculture and says, you know, you got a grant for X millions of dollars, and September's coming, and you guys are having, everybody has to suffer my letters that go out every April. What's your how much do you get in federal grants? How much is going to be returned? How much is and I get back these very obtuse reports that I can't tell what's happening, but then I get an OPA report that says, though Manny and Agriculture said that they were spending their money, they returned it. Or I get a report from from off island, from DOI, saying $31 million was returned by Guam. Who has that information, and what is the truth of that matter?
That would be the Guam State Clearinghouse at Adelup. I know I get emails almost every 3 or 4 days from them, regarding the review of a federal grant application, but they are the central office for.
No, I also get emails and says this grant has been applied for. I wish I was on the mailing list that sent out the request. I mean, because I'm trying to figure it out, because even with like fisheries, when that was, I know from the days when Mr. Cruz was up at Agriculture, we had many discussions about the deployment of the FADs. And it's still not out there. I still get the fishermen screaming at me that why aren't the FADs deployed? And so I'm trying to figure out who oversees this. Some of you are here in BSP, some are at Clearinghouse, some are at Agriculture. There's got to somehow be a central body that each of the neurons aren't going off by themselves without a central brain.
Well, our fisheries grant under Monica's division has to do with the collection of fisheries data, and
I'll let others ask
and
questions.
that's just a specific grant for that purpose.
Do you have?
I'm sorry. We don't. We're not involved with that specific grant under agriculture.
Yeah.
And how is it that you were involved in some of these other grants? Under what authority are you overseeing these?
Under the IFA and the WPAC-FIN, we have a cooperative agreement for the past 20 years to oversee that grant. And then with the import and export.
With who?
With National Marine Fisheries Service.
It's a division of NOAA.
Yes. And this recent grant regarding the fish import and export, we just received grant funding in 2016. So that was discretionary. We applied for that, a competitive grant.
Okay. My company wants to know the rent. You mentioned that's for the Developmental Disabilities Council. How large is that space?
I believe it's 1,000 square feet.
And you're saying that the amount was 11,000, but our report shows 33. How much is the rent? I'm showing 33, but you testified earlier that the rent for disabilities was 11,000?
No, that's the variance for 2019. In fact, in 2016, their office space was only 1,100 square feet. Based on they have a GDDC council members where they meet, so they increased their office space to another wing at Castle Mall, which it added on another 1,100 square feet.
They
they
doubled in size.
The annual appropriation we were giving them was over $40,000. Based on this year, we had to address the issue of our funding shortfall, so we had to advise them that we can only fund one room. So this year, in 2018, they gave back one office space unit. So they didn't fund their conference room for their members. So if you look at the budget, it went down from $39,000 in 2017 that we spent, went down to $20,000 in 2018, and then the variance in 2019 was an increase of $11,383. Because what had happened is their 5-year lease expired, and they're in transition to move, and their rent is slowly going up. So we're trying to advise them, because one of the commitments of the government is to allocate additional support, either to find government facilities where they could occupy, or to cover their costs for rent. So in 2017, it was $39,000. 2018, it's $20,000 for one office space. And now there's a variance of $11,000 increase in 2019. But we're hoping to coordinate with them once they finally move in and to ascertain the true cost. And if it's cheaper, then we won't spend the money. But we just need to cover it just in case their rent goes up.
Maybe you can explain how it is and why it is that Bureau of Statistics and Plans has all of these federal programs under its mission and how that aligns with the mission of BSP.
Hi, Speaker. Lola Leongro, the Chief Planner. In the Bureau of Statistics Plans...
Get the microphone closer.
Okay, with the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, they're in our mandate. There is one of these things where there's other tasks that's not done by other entities, we handle it. So for example, the U.S. Department of Justice grant, the Edward Byrne JAG grant, we were designated as the state administrative agency of that federal funds. And with that federal funds came the Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Grant Program. If you're the SAA for the Byrne JAG, you're also the SAA for the RSAT, Residential Substance Abuse Treatment. You're also the Prison Rape Elimination Act and the Paul Carbondale Forensic Science Grant Program. So that's in reference to the U.S. DOJ. Those are the grants that we administer at the Bureau. So basically, the Byrne JAG is driven based on a strategic plan that's prepared every 5 years with stakeholders from the criminal justice agencies as well as the Rape Crisis Center, Judiciary of Guam, we have them as members, and then also the legislature. So what we do is we define the resource needs and the priority to develop that multi-year plan. Based on that plan, we prepare our Byrne JAG, because that's one of the requirements for the funding. So when we get the funding, 10% of the money stays at BSP for administrative costs. The 90% is passed through to our subgrantees. So basically, we prepare MOUs and work requests to subgrant the monies out. Like for example, we provide funding resources to the Healing Hearts Crisis Center. We provide funding to the Office of the Attorney General for Sexual Assault Prosecutor, as well as since 1992, we actually, with our Burn JAG monies, we have implemented the Criminal Justice Records Information System amongst our law enforcement agency. That's with GPD, DOC, the AG's office, and the judiciary. We actually funded their information systems.
Yes, but who wrote that grant?
We did, the Bureau, myself, and the people in the socioeconomic planning section. And so the other grant that we also administer, but see, keep in mind, 10% only stays with the Bureau. So there's a staff of 2 plus myself, because I'm an admin, and I have 2 staff in social. We basically administer, as far as our subgrantee, we probably have 27 subgrantees. And we have to maintain that compliance, compliance and review as a result of those federal resources to make sure the projects are implemented and the reports get submitted to the grantor.
Are all the grants that you're administering written by the BSP?
Yes, in collaboration with our partners. So for example, the RSAT, we would collaborate with RSAT on what their resource needs are to implement the project, and then we pretty much develop it and submit it on our grants management system.
So then that brings up a whole other question. How much in administrative 10% money are you guys receiving, and what is that being used for at the department?
Okay, so the 10%, at least for the Burn JAG, and see the funding source has actually decreased over time. So maybe now with the Burn JAG, maybe receive 600. At one time we were receiving over $1 million. And way back when I was hired with the government of Guam in the early 90s, I was 100% federally funded. I started off as a Planner 1, and I assisted our Mickey Leon Guerrero, who was at the time the supervisor in the Burn JAG, and I've been with the BSP since the early 90s to now, and I've still handled the Burn JAG. So 10%, actually most of that goes to fund our admin assistant in our office, and then also contractual costs for copier lease, internet, monthly office supplies, like we have a contractual maintenance also on our printers, and maybe some funding for trainings that required trainings under the grant to BJA.
And so how much does the department receive annually from the 10%?
So I'm going to say maybe if we
from
have
all the grants that you have.
Oh gosh, we would need to calculate that. I know. I'm going to say
it's got to be somewhere.
Yes, we do have that. I don't. Do we have that here? Yeah. So for example.
And so what is that money used for by the department?
No. So for example, I'm going to go with on the U.S. Department of Justice grants, we can only maintain 10% of that funding, with the exception of the Prison Rape Elimination Act grant. The PREA grant requires that all of the funding goes towards PREA compliance. That money gets funneled over to Department of Corrections. So let's say in FY 2017, maybe we got, which we haven't yet gotten our award. They have not released the funding for the Burn JAG due to some litigation issues. So that's probably maybe $677,000 plus. No, for RSAT, is it like 37? I guess I need a pen. So 677, 35. Coverdell for 17? 66. Does that say 60? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 16, 17. So let's say in FY 2017 with the Burn Jack, Coverdell, RSAT, is a total of $772,000. We retain 10% of that, which is $77,000 for admin costs. That's not a lot.
No, I understand. But if you have 10 grants
Yes.
at 77 each, that's
Yeah,
not a
no.
small chunk of change. What is that money used for?
So the U.S. Department of Justice grants, the burn specifically is used to fund our admin assistant. And then there's some monies for contractual services. So with our grants, we prorate the copier, the internet, amongst the different grants. We cannot just charge our copier lease to just one grant. We have to prorate it amongst the existing federal resources
So that money is
we
being
have.
used for the operation of the department. All
Correct.
I'm asking is how much is received?
Terry, where's the inventory, the federal grant inventory?
Speaker, just to clarify, we have 27 active grants. They vary from some being direct implementation, like our coastal management grants, where if they get $878,000, it's for direct implementation. We do have a few pass-through grants, like Lola was alluding to, the Burn JAG Assistance Grant. They give appropriations every year, and what we do is we have like sometimes 3 or 4 concurrent grants at one time. So first in, first out, grants are spent. Each year, depending on Congress, how much money is appropriated, like what Alola's alluding to, the recent grant was $678,000. So we get $67,000 for direct administration for our 10% admin costs. Like we mentioned earlier in regards to maintaining our operations, the amounts are nominal because it's not like out of the 27 grants, we get 60,000 times 27. These grants are, some grants are the same grant, but 3 different multi-years. Monica's grant, WPAC-FIN, or IFA, it's like $13,000 and it's for direct implementation. Her WestPAC-FIN grant is $55,000 a year and it funds 1 data control clerk. We always look at all of our grant operations and we maximize every single grant, and we tell them, a lot of the times they try to utilize our federal grants and get the indirect costs, but we try to maintain some monies to cover operational costs, whether it be for rent, not rent, but for supplies, contractual, and equipment. None of our equipment that was purchased at our office for the past 10 years were purchased out of local funds. It's always done through the local census grant or any of the grants that we have. Even the director's computer, my computer, the phone lines, all paid out of federal grants. So you mentioned the fact that although we're operating in silos, a lot of governments operate on silos, we look at ways to maximize the limited funds we get. So is it a big amount? Are we getting millions? Yes, we administer $9 million in federal grants, but the amount that's given for administrative costs is very nominal, less than $150,000 a year.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted it on the record that
Sure.
if you're getting money on the side not appropriated through us, I just needed some kind of report.
Sure.
Is that provided in the report somewhere to?
Well,
to the
we could provide
legislature?
you what the. Yeah, but it didn't show the amount for admin costs. We could provide that figure to you, of how much money total in amongst our federal grant awards is earmarked for administrative costs.
Yeah, I mean, because,
Sure.
I mean, in the federal government, there's that non-appropriated funds. It was not appropriated by us. If somehow we just got a report back that said annually we received from all of these grants a grand total of 95,000 or...
Sure,
and we use it for the following purposes.
And to caveat what my director said in his opening statement, out of the 34 active employees, about 45% are federally funded amongst the 27 different grants that we have. So it's monies are there to fund personnel to implement key programs that are related to grant implementation. And there is a nominal amount to cover operational costs for the respective grants. And of course, because we're administering it, we charge the grant for the cost of our office. So if you look at our budget submittal, in 2017, we spent $200 for contractual, $1,000 in supplies. We just have to put that nominal charge to show that the government is paying for their fair share of locally funded programs. But we always look at ways, and like we alluded to earlier, we look at the bigger picture, not just how we could save money for our agency, but the impact we have on the general fund. So,
Okay, thank you. Did you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Could you update us on the COFA enumeration, and can you describe to us how that's funded?
Monica has lots of experience on that. I'll refer to
The COFA enumeration is funded under the U.S. Department of Interior. It's anticipated to take place sometime July or later this summer, but it may be delayed pending the contract. So we're still waiting on the contract. We are looking at estimating between 2,000 to 4,000 households, but it has not been defined yet by the Census Bureau. So the monies, what we understand is when we submitted the compact impact report back in this year, Bureau Budget and Management had reserved $177,000 for the purposes of this enumeration. So any monies earmarked for this project above $177,000 will be paid for by Interior. Interior has tapped the U.S. Census Bureau to oversee this project.
Thank you, Iman. Could you also elaborate on any changes in the methodology that might make this enumeration more accurate?
At this time, we
previous?
don't have the methodology, so it's still everything is still preliminary. Once that is available, we can make that available to you, Senator.
Please, that would be
We don't have
great.
that at this time.
And in that same similar vein, we're anticipating the 2020 census. It's just around the corner, and there's a lot of logistical support and planning, as we have discussed in our meetings, in preparation for the census, and the director has alluded to about $10 million in anticipated economic activity for the census. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to brief us on that.
Okay, at this time, the questionnaire or the questions have been finalized. The U.S. Census Bureau had submitted the finalized questions and wording and content to U.S. Congress on March 29th of this year. They have to follow a time schedule. At this time, we are working with them in identifying the scope of work and responsibilities. What our office has done to date is that we are doing currently a market research on available office space. We don't know what the amount of square footage is at this time, but back in 2010, it was 20,000 square feet. We are having some challenges in looking at available properties at this time, so that's what we're doing. We are working at looking at monthly meetings with the Census Bureau. So one of the things up to date is the contract, and working on the budget with them. So we don't have that at this time. So to date, it's only the questionnaire finalized as well as the wording.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to reiterate my suggestion that I made in our meeting prior to this budget hearing, that maybe you try to get in touch with GITA and see if there are any GITA leases that we might be able to utilize as we ramp up for the 2020 census. We just want to make sure that if there's federal dollars that are coming in and going to be spent for rental properties, that we try to just make the most use of our resources.
Yes. Thank you again for that suggestion. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I find it very interesting, this discussion, because I've always been intrigued by the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. It seems like a very important piece of this government, especially when you start talking plans. And I'm reading this 21-pager. Under the administration, the administration division is responsible for ensuring Guam's resources are effectively used for the benefit of present and future generations by appraising, coordinating, preparing, and assisting in the development of a wide range of plans, policies, studies, and statistics that further economic, social, land use, environmental, and infrastructure goals, priorities, and activities. It's a long sentence, but it seems all-inclusive. It seems to say that you are an important part of the whole planning process for the entire government in many different areas.
Yes, but we don't plan everything in the government. So, for example, the Port Authority has a master plan. They develop their master plan. Do they seek our guidance in the development of their master plan?
Okay, and I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Port Authority, GPA, and all the utilities, although autonomous, semi-autonomous, I'm not really concerned with.
Yes.
However, that being said, it was mentioned here, it was mentioned in previous budget hearings, right? Office space seems to be a recurring couple of words, issues that come up, right? And after a meeting with some federal officials, it was more of an informal meeting, a get-to-know-you type meeting. Bottom line is, I understand there's a lot of federal money available right now for infrastructure. The question that I had to them, that I posed to you, was the question I posed to them is related to what the question I have to you right now is. And that is, considering that there are many agencies out there who are renting space as opposed to being housed in government-owned facilities, do you know, since you do a lot of planning and try to understand the lay of the land for the government, do you know how much we spend in rental to house the various agencies? I mean, is there a ballpark figure? And the reason why I ask that is because when we start talking to perhaps the federal side of the matters, right, their concern was, is there a dedicated funding source for them to be able to assist us? And in my mind is, well, throughout all these decades of Guam renting office space, we could have owned several buildings several times over. You in this meeting before us have talked about it also, that you're now looking for some space or, and have had to jive it around. You're not the only ones. So the question is, do you know how much we spend since since you work with the overall planning of the government, excluding semi-autonomous and autonomous agency, about how much we spend on rental per year? Just
I do not offhand.
Okay.
I do not offhand.
Okay. And it might be, and I throw that out because it might be something that you want to know. Because when we start talking about long-term planning and really trying to right-size our government, and again, you playing your division playing a very instrumental role in all of this, right? It would behoove us, and it's been said, I'm not the originator of this idea, it's been said many times over, right, that if we would only just house ourselves using and perhaps using the money we pay out to rent all these things, that we could have our own facilities. And we should have our own facilities, our own government facilities. But again, as the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, I think it is probably within your realm to be able to examine that posture. Where can we go from here? How much money do we really spend on rental, and how much of that money can be dedicated to building our own using the assistance of the federal government, and how much that would actually save us to start dispensing out to the various needs of the various agencies. And so I just want to have that input at this time, because again, you have been congratulated by the speaker and your chair, and we do all recognize the good work you do, right? But I think, again, maybe a further step or two to help the whole government, right, to save money might be something. And like I said, there are federal programs right now in a recent meeting, I believe there's several $billion worth of infrastructure money there. And I had asked specifically, are we talking not just roads and whatnot? Can we talk buildings? They said definitely, but there needs to be a dedicated funding source.
Well, now that you've brought it up, Senator Espaldon, we're going to be visited by the representative of the Economic Development Administration next week. He's the new regional representative out of Honolulu, and I will be entertaining him while he's here. Okay. I'll pick his brain on that. Please do, because like I said, I think we're at a whole new time, and especially if we start looking at buildings that are perhaps more in tune with the technology, hardwiring that needs to be in some of the buildings we get into, or even that we exist in right now, don't have the built-in necessities for the technology we have, coming forth. And I think that as we look forward, and trying to, again, make us more efficient and more cost-effective, I think this is one major area, because I know we spend millions of dollars every year on rent, and the only thing we see in return is nothing, aside from the office space they provide during that year. But in the end, like I said, we could probably pay off some of these buildings within a shorter timeline than a 30-year mortgage, just because of how much money we spend on rent. Just putting it on your plate. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're welcome.
I have no further questions. I want to thank you for your very thorough presentation and appendix. And for the listening audience, it'll be posted on the ofbguam.org website. For those of you that want to read the entire presentation that was provided by the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. With that, we will stand in recess until tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock when we meet with the Department of Parks and Recreations. Thank you.